Hola, ¿qué tal amigos? Buenos días, buenas tardes y buenas noches. No importa la hora que sea, siempre es un gran momento para aprender español con Profesor Pablo. Our lesson today is a fun lesson, aquí say plus the present tense and other considerations. Let's take a look at our first cluster. It is used with the third person singular and plural. You've all heard aquí se habla español, which means Spanish spoken here. Aquí se habla español. Well, after the aquí se, we use the third person singular and plural. The third person singular would be the él, ella, usted, it form, and the third person plural would be the ellos, ellas, ustedes form. So again, when you hear aquí se habla español, Spanish is spoken here. Aquí se habla inglés. Aquí no se habla español. Spanish is not spoken here. Aquí se habla inglés. English is spoken here. So you're going to use the él, ella, or the ellos, ellas form after aquí se. You use it with signs, rules, and statements. For example, in a hospital, you might see a sign next to a generator or a room that produces electricity, and it says, Aquí no se fuma, no smoking here. Aquí no se permite fumar. Smoking is not permitted here. Aquí no se fuma, no smoking here. You see it in signs. You see it listed as rules. Like you could have a bunch of rules for your business, your office, or your campground, whatever it may be, right? Like in a hospital, aquí no se corre, or no se corre en los pasillos. We put etc. because we want to make sure that you understand that it can be used without the aquí as well. For example, you don't run in a hospital. No se corre en un hospital. This is called the passive reflexive. Passive means we're not saying who does the running, who does the smoking, who does the speaking. We're just talking about Spanish being spoken or running not being done, right? Or smoking not being done. We're focused on the action, not the person. That's why it's called passive. And it's reflexive because we use the reflexive pronoun. Okay, let's review the first clusters. The aquí se is used with third person singular and third person plural. This would be the él, ella. This would be the ellos, ellas. We use it with signs, rules, and just making a statement. For example, se sirve excelente comida en ese restaurante. They serve great food in that restaurant. Or great food is served in that restaurant. You could say sirven excelente comida en ese restaurante. When you say sirven, you're saying they and then serve. But if you just say allí se sirve excelente comida, you're not talking about who, you're just saying excellent food is served there. And so that's what this passive reflexive is all about. It's not stating a subject, it's focusing on the action. And when you say, like for example, no se corre en el hospital, aquí se habla español, no se grita en un hospital, that se refers to everyone, right? It applies to everyone. Let's take a look at some examples here. Again, aquí se habla español, Spanish spoken here. Or take the aquí off, like we told you. You don't need the aquí. You'll see people with their business cards, they'll say, se habla español at the bottom to let you know that Spanish is spoken. Vender. Aquí se venden periódicos. Newspapers are sold here, right? Aquí se vende helado. Ice cream is sold here. Now you can substitute, of course, aquí with allí. You're talking about a store across the street to a kid or a friend, right? You say, allí se vende helado. Ice cream is sold there. But in English, we would say, they sell ice cream there. But you could say, venden helado allí. More common to say, allí se vende helado. You don't care about who's selling, just the fact that ice cream is sold. So you can use this singular or plural. Servir, we just did. Allí se sirve gran comida. Great food is served there. Entregar. A teacher points to a little tray on his or her desk and says, allí se entregan los papeles. The papers are turned in there. Allí se entregan los papeles. Esperar. You're waiting to see someone in his or her office, and the secretary to you says, aquí se espera. You wait here. Aquí se espera. You're not getting personal. You're not stating usted or tú. You're just saying aquí se espera. In other words, the waiting is done right here. It's a beautiful structure. Firmar. Oh my gosh, how many times have we heard this? The older you are, the more you've heard it, right? Or said it. Aquí se firma. The car salesman saying, aquí se firma. Here's where you sign, right? You sign here. You meaning in general, everybody. Aquí se firma. No. Allí no se firma. No, you don't sign there. Buscar. This is a great one. A wanted poster, right? They could have a picture of a criminal and his or her name, and then it'll say se busca, wanted. In other words, sought after, right? Searched for. Se busca. Down here, solicita. You see that outside of a business. Like if they need a waitress, they'll say, se solicita mesera. Or they need a waiter, se solicita mesero. You could say, workers wanted, se solicitan trabajadores. Bilingual workers wanted, se solicitan trabajadores bilingües. This is beautiful. Correr. Our example from before, en la escuela no se corre en el salón de clase. In the classroom you don't run. En el hospital no se corre, ¿verdad? En la tienda no se corre. ¿Por qué no se corre? Alguien puede caerse. Hay gente vieja caminando, ¿verdad? Hay que tener cuidado. You go to a big gym, like at San Diego State University. I think they call it the Arc. It's massive. It's wonderful. It's huge. Nothing greater than college athletic gymnasiums, facilities, whether it be for volleyball, basketball, football, soccer. Oh my gosh. Colleges, at least in California, and I know it's across the nation here, and I'm sure it holds probably throughout the world, hopefully. But college facilities for sports are incredible. So, they could have a sign. All sports are played here. Todos los juguetes. Todos los deportes se juegan aquí. Aquí se juegan muchos deportes. Many sports are played here. Someone's goofing around. Jugar can mean goofing around. And the person says, hey, you don't screw around here. You don't mess around here. Aquí no se juega. In jail. En la cárcel, no se juega. You don't play around. No se juega. Fumar. No smoking here. Aquí no se fuma. Decir. At church, one doesn't say those things. En la iglesia, en el templo, donde sea, no se dicen esas cosas. Eso no se dice. You don't say that. Eso no se dice. Here, you don't say that. Aquí no se dice eso. You don't mention that here. Aquí no se menciona eso. It's kind of like it's like a rule, right? It's like a verbal rule you're saying. Aquí no se dice eso. Aquí, you don't do that here. Aquí no se hace eso. Cerrar. The doors are closed at 8 o'clock. Las puertas se cierran a las 8. Notice we're not saying by whom the doors are closed. Here, we're closed at 9 o'clock. Aquí se cierra a las 9. In other words, we shut down at 9. In English, we say we, but in Spanish, when you say aquí se cierra a las 9, it is understood in English, here we shut down at 9, but in Spanish, there is no subject mentioned. Passive reflexive. Abrir. You could say they open at 7 a.m., abren a las 7 de la mañana, or you could say se abre a las 7 de la mañana. It's opened at 7 a.m. Se abre a las 7 de la mañana. Leer. You got to read this first, like on a contract. Antes de firmar, before signing, esto se lee primero. Se tiene que leer esto primero. Se lee, esto se lee primero. You read this first. You say, aquí se lee, you read here, y abajo se firma, and down below you sign. Gritar. hombre, no se grita en la casa muy noche. Don't be shouting in the house late at night. No se grita en la casa de noche. Hay personas que, no sé, tal vez estén en la cama durmiendo, no se sabe, pero no se grita en el hospital, en la escuela se grita durante la clase de PE para celebrar algo, en un salón de clase durante una clase, se grita a veces, ¿verdad? Pero en un hospital no se grita. Eso sí, en un hospital no se grita. All right, that's the lesson. Aquí say, allí say. You can use it without the aquí, without the allí. And say what happens. You're focusing on the action and not the person. We call it the passive reflexive. Reflexive because you use the reflexive pronoun. And passive because we're not stating the subject, actually who does whatever the action is. We use the el, ella, ellos, ellas forms. You use it for signs, rules, and just general statements. Trabajando de ingeniero, working as an engineer, se gana mucho dinero. One earns a lot of money, right? Aquí se gana mucho dinero. You could have a sign walking into Google and it says above the doors of entry, aquí se gana mucho dinero. One earns a lot of money here. Hey, here's one. How about for Disney World and Disneyland and Euro Disney? On top of the entry gates. I know Walt wouldn't want this, but aquí se gasta muchísimo dinero. Tons of money is spent here. Aquí se gasta mucho dinero. A lot of money is spent here. Okay? Es todo por ahora. Aquí en mi estudio se enseña español. In my studio here, Spanish is taught. ¿Verdad? Okay. Gracias. Tengo un gran día. Frank, mi amigo Frankenstein. En el momento de filmar este video, estamos en septiembre, es el mes antes de octubre, ya viene el Día de las Brujas. Tengo como 15 camisetas del hombre lobo, ¡au!, de Frankenstein, de la esposa de Frankenstein, etc. Me encanta el Día de las Brujas y necesito empezar a ponerme las camisetas del Día de las Brujas. Cariños, abrazos, tengan ustedes una gran semana, cuídense mucho y hasta la próxima lección. Bye bye.